You're listening to the LA Football Podcast.
Welcome back to the LA Football Show here on the Mightier 1090 ESPN Radio, always on the LA Football Network. This is your Rams segment. What's up, Ramley? How is everyone doing? Based on the way your team is performing, probably not well, but hopefully, you're gearing up for Thanksgiving or already celebrated Thanksgiving. There's a lot to be thankful for just because your team's 3-7. Life is good. Think of all the bright stuff, and we're here to hopefully brighten your day with some Rams chatter, as not a lot of good things to talk about this upcoming game, Jamal, but we'll try to talk about some other maybe positive developments or some other things that can maybe be bright spots for this team moving forward. Joined as always by the madman, Jamal Madney. Welcome back from the break. How we doing, man?
Doing well, Rye. Excited to talk about this game, Rams-Chiefs. Whenever we talk about a Rams-Chiefs game, I can't help but always drift my mind back to that iconic game on Monday Night Football, that, what was it, 55-52 game that was just so special back in the Coliseum between Mahomes and Goff.
Yeah, what a phenomenal game. It's supposed to be in Mexico City, which is, the year basically, or what would it be now? 5 year? Are we at 5 years already? Anniversary of that game?
Years. That's incredible, right?
Crazy. 5 year. It was such a cool moment for LA because literally 24-hour notice, they decide from Mexico City, we're going to play this game in LA, and that Coliseum was packed with fans on a Monday night, people scrambling, getting tickets. And so what a cool moment for Los Angeles. And obviously the game certainly did not disappoint. This one, on the other hand, will probably disappoint a lot of Rams fans. It really is just no shot in hell unless, any given Sunday, I guess, right? But I just don't see any way this Rams team, which most likely will have Bryce Perkins starting at quarterback, no Cooper Kupp, injuries on defense. Sean McVay kind of seems a little checked out at the coaching position, and you have a Chiefs team who, even with some of their injuries, seem to be firing in all cylinders. Before we get into it, Jamal, one thing I have to say, as a fan and as a quote unquote journalist, I don't even know what I'm considered necessarily, a content creator, whatever. The two teams I really dislike the most in the NFL are the Niners and the Chiefs. And we had to cover 6 games this year with these teams. The Niners 3 games, the Chiefs 3 games, because both played in the division and then both played the Chargers and Rams outside of the division. I'm sick and tired of talking about the Chiefs and Niners, Jamal. I'm glad we're done after this week.
Oh my God. The torturous game for you then, what Ryan was 2 years ago in the Super Bowl, I'm sure, with when it was Niners Chiefs.
Oh, of course. I didn't watch any of it.
Ryan, look, let's do this segment a little bit differently and I think have some fun with it and get deep into the analysis. Let's just get the predictions out of the way right now. Let's not even sort of waste some time here. They're not winning this game. This is, I think of Al Pacino in Any Given Sunday with that great speech at the end. You want the fingernails for that inch. I mean, the size of the fingernails that you need to win this game for the Rams, you basically have to go manicureless for about 5 years to have the requisite fingernails to be able to win this game. This is going to be 30-16 Chiefs in a game where Mahomes is kind of going to be kind of coasting. They could probably put up 50 in this game if they wanted to. It'll be 30-16. Rams will go to 3-8. And then we'll talk about the games after that moving forward. So let's just get the predictions out of the way. I'm really excited, though, in this game to see the development of some of the young players, most notably Kyren Williams. And I'd love to see, we talked about this a couple days ago, Ryan, how Kyren Williams responds with 10-plus touches. I'm excited to see if we can get Brandon Powell, if we can get Tutu Atwell the ball more and see what we have in these young players as pieces for next year. I'm excited to see what the young secondary can do against the Andy Reid schemed up concepts and see what their competitiveness is, what their poise is, what their different executional abilities are as stalwarts of this roster next year. So I'm looking at individual talent and seeing how they respond and compete moving forward. We don't know what the state of Matt Stafford is going to be into this game. I highly doubt he's going to play, given the language around him this week, given the NFL having an eye on Stafford's situation, in particular with everything else that's gone on with Tua Tagovailoa and others over the course of the NFL. I think this is going to be a Perkins game. And so I'm excited to see how these guys respond. Hey, does Perkins have a spot on this roster as a QB2 next year? So much of the conversation was the battle between him and Wolford, or the battle that did not happen in the preseason and why it did not happen. So I think there's a ton to sort of peel away. This game is kind of like an onion. You got to peel away layer at a layer, though, at a time to be able to find the real golden nuggets.
Yeah, absolutely. So my prediction, definitely loss to go to 3-8. I will go with 35-13.
Wow.
Big win for the Chiefs. Hopefully my negative, which is very rare for me to be negative on the show, Jamal, will be reversed, and maybe the Rams will kind of show some life in Bryce Perkins' legs and have a different game script, and we'll see some fun play design, but not feeling too confident in this one. And unfortunately, Jamal, that means that these two hated teams, Chiefs and Niners, went 6-0 against our teams this year. That will mean 6-0. Oh, it's like a dagger in the heart of all teams to lose to. At least my Broncos beat the Niners. So I got one win there randomly of all teams to get a win. Somehow the horrible Broncos, I don't think they'll get any against the Chiefs. They haven't played them yet. I'm sure they'll go 0-2. So yeah, rough year for us against these two teams. But I'm extremely excited to see Kyren Williams. I'm extremely excited to see the opportunity. I mean, this we talked about it last episode. This is now at this point of the year time for these young players to get reps, to see what you have in the future, to kind of see how you're going to construct your roster moving forward. Obviously, we already talked about the news of releasing Darrell Henderson, releasing Justin Hollins, releasing Kendall Blanton. So I would assume that means the jury is out on them. They're moving on in those positions, trying to see some other young guys go. And obviously Kyren Williams is one of those. And we talked about it, a couple days ago. Will he be the feature back? Will they draft someone alongside him? Will they sign a free agent? Is he more a third down pace back? These next games, and this one specifically, will really give us a lot of answers in that, and kind of how he fits in this offense, and whether this offense will look the same next year. I mean, whether McVay will be back next year, whether Liam Cohen will be the OC if McVay returns next year. So many things now that we can get answers for over these next weeks that may not result in wins, but I think we can have a lot of good analysis and questions and fun with it from a analysis and content perspective, but also from the Rams perspective. Like, if I'm a coach right now, this is when obviously you don't want to have a losing season. Obviously, especially coming off a Super Bowl win, do you want to have the worst losing start in NFL history? But once you get to that point now, you kind of breathe. The pressure is off now. Again, you never throw in the towel as a coach and say the season's over, but realistically, you can say, okay, the pressure's off. Let's go have some fun as a coach. Let's have fun as a team. Let's band together. Let's keep battling. Let's keep grinding. But now we can really kind of move chess pieces around, play with different play calls, play with things we haven't done. Obviously, an offense led by Bryce Perkins is going to look very different than an offense led by Matthew Stafford. So we can kind of test some different things out. We can see, is Tutu Atwell going to be on this roster next year? I mean, if he's going to be on this roster, he needs to have more than one catch or two catches and one touchdown in a season. I don't care where he was drafted. So how are they going to get Tutu involved more? Are we going to see Lance McCutcheon get more involved in the offense? These are the questions that we can now get answers to and have a lot of fun with, Jamal.
Absolutely right. And I think you broke it down beautifully. And I think the big picture question, you talked about kind of the individual players and who's going to be on this roster next year. I think the big picture question for me, if I'm Les Snead, is to say, do we want to give it another go next year with this core of Kupp, Donald, Stafford, Ramsey, or do we want to accelerate the rebuilding process and maybe trade a Ramsey and maybe trade some others for picks and get that going? Because we won the Super Bowl going all in, the experiment worked, and now we're sort of on house money. And so the question now becomes, does 2023 become this last stand year for this core to give it another go? Or is 2023 now a full-on rebuild to sort of accelerate that process, so by 2025 you're a contender again? And I think the only way you answer that question is by understanding what else you have around this core through these individual matchups. Because if you realize, look, these guys are young, they're talented, they're super raw, they're maybe a year or two away, from being credible contributors on a game-over-game basis for a team that wants to make a deep playoff run, then you're more inclined to start that rebuilding process earlier. But if you can see that Kyron Williams can be an every down back, if you can see that, hey, Tutu Atwell, it was more of a product of a lack of targets and a lack of the right situations around him in terms of formations, with stack, with different route tree concepts, then you can say, hey, we actually have the weapons. We get a healthy Stafford. We get a healthy Kupp back. Donald will be Donald. We make a couple of tweaks in terms of moves on the defense, and now we can make another credible run at the division, at a playoff spot, and getting another ring. So to me, this now becomes a 7-game sample for Les Snead and company to say, what do we really have and what do we want our 2023 strategy to be? And also to observe Sean McVay and say, how is he responding to these next 7 weeks? What is his level of engagement? What is his level of enjoyment? What is his level of attention to detail? And how close is he to really hanging it up after this year? Or does he want to come back for one more year, but really put his heart in it and really give it one credible go? Because the reality, Ryan, is we just never saw a full game from the Rams this year. They're 3-7, but the 3 wins, you could argue, were very unimpressive victories. Certainly not 4 quarters of quality football when you break down the Panthers, the Falcons, and the Cardinals that they played. Those were very choppy wins. They were lucky to sort of win all of those games. They were either behind or almost behind in all of those games. So you never saw a credible title defense. They lost. They got the doors blown off opening night on ring night to the Bills and never seemed to recover from that. So what do you really have in terms of coaching, and what do you really have in terms of personnel to inform your 2023 strategy is going to be the key for me.
Yeah, this is just to talk about a few other players, then I want to touch on Les Snead. Everything you said, it's such an opportunity for these young guys. And talking specifically about Tutu Atwell, Jamal, I watched a lot of film after the Rams drafted him to kind of see what they were getting. And the biggest concern with Tutu since he's been in the NFL is staying healthy, right? Because of his size. I mean, if you're 165 wet and you're having these 270-pound linebackers bearing down on you, like I would get injured in 3 plays in the NFL. And that's my weight. I weigh 165. So I get that. But now we're at the point where you got to throw out the door. Like, you don't want to throw a guy that, like, where he's just going to get headhunted, but you have to say, can you stay healthy enough to be on this roster or not? Like, be damned, we used our 2nd round pick in college at Louisville. With that offense, they implored Tutu in a lot of fun ways. A lot, kind of how the Rams used Brandon Powell a little bit. Yep. Tutu Atwell did that in college much more than he obviously has with the Rams. Stuff out, bubble screens out of the backfield, different crossing routes that got him open in space. Because at Louisville, they just wanted the ball in his hands because of how fast he was. It didn't have to be a 70-yard go route. It was get him the ball 2 yards down the field, kind of like a CMC in a sense. Now, obviously, he won't have that same ability because of his size, but let's see it at this point. Like, if you can't stay healthy, then you can't stay healthy. And what are we wasting a spot for you on? So I would love to see that out of Sean McVay and Tutu. It's like, okay, kind of put the chips in on Tutu and let's see you in space and see you create plays for yourself instead of only, because guess what? The defense knows that too. If they see Tutu on the field, he's probably running a 9 route. Tutu's running a go route, similar to when Deshaun Jackson was here last year for the 6 games he was. Deshaun Jackson averaged like 8 snaps a game, and 7 of them were 9 routes. And then 1 was like a running play. Like, that's a tell to the defense too. If the defense knows when you're on the field what the play call is going to be, you're not going to be successful in it. So if now they can get Tutu involved in different variations of the offense, because A, you want to see what you have, and B, you kind of have to at this point with the injuries and who's your quarterback, that it would be a lot of fun to see. So that's what I want to see out of Tutu moving forward. I think, Bobby Evans should probably not be on this roster next year, but at this point, they're just so banged up on offensive line, they kind of have to. So there'll be some analysis on him, which should be, he won't be back, but hey, we'll see more out of him because he's going to get some more reps just because of, necessity in a sense. When you look at defense, Jamal, there's 2 players that I really want to see a lot out of, and that's Bobby Brown on the defensive line and Terrell Lewis as an edge rusher. Bobby Brown when he was drafted in the 4th round of Texas A&M, I've mentioned this before, but I spoke to Coach Henne after the pick, the defensive line coach, and he likened him in size and intangibles, not saying nearly the talent level, but size and intangibles to an Aaron Donald type player. we can't even, Bobby Brown obviously was suspended going into this year, but we're not even seeing him on the field. So here's a guy that I want to start seeing some reps. I saw him in training camp and OTAs, and quite frankly, he didn't really look like he had put in much work in the offseason. Looked a little sloppy in the individual drills. Let's see if that talent can take over and maybe that work ethic can snap him into getting reps, because at this point in the season, he's another guy. I mean, this draft class, Jamal, from 2019 to 2021 is looking pretty bleak for the Rams, and he's obviously in that group. And then Terrell Lewis, you cut Justin Hollins, who had a very promising start to last year before injury. So now you're putting a lot of ownership on Terrell Lewis to be a much more vital piece as an edge rusher, and B, to prove he can stay healthy. So similar to Tutu Atwell, similar to some of the other guys we talked about, this is the time of the year to say, if you can't stay healthy now, then we can't have you on this roster next year, because we're putting our faith in you to be a playmaker, to seize this opportunity, and to stay healthy. And if you can't, then we are fully moving on next year and resetting the deck fully. And so I'm getting very long-winded, but the thing I'll say about Les Snead now, this is a huge opportunity for Les to really staple his legacy as a GM in general, because he was the GM, remember, back in the St. Louis days when he got the job and, had his early drafts and had the Jeff Fisher era. He brought in Sean McVay, turned things around, trades everything up for Jared Goff, and then flips the script, has this whole F them picks, all in mentality. It worked. And now we could see him go back to a different style of building back through the draft, resetting the deck and doing this. And he could go down if things work out and he can turn this thing around quickly as one of the better GMs in the history of the NFL, because he would have done it in 3 very different ways, which is why I, for one, when John, and we're getting out of time here already, John Elway, former GM of the Broncos, I know he's gotten a lot of, slack for those last 4 seasons after the Super Bowl, but why I give him a lot of credit as a GM is in 2013, they went to the Super Bowl led by an all-pro Peyton Manning, the best offense in NFL history. 2 years later, they went to the Super Bowl on one of the best defenses in NFL history. So proving that they can do it in different ways, and Les Snead now has that ability.
No, Ryan, I think you said it best. With Les Snead, I think now he's been able to show that he's a great GM with the F them pick strategy. Now can he be a great GM with the bless them pick strategy and be able to come back in that particular way? Because you mentioned he hired McVay. He as a tactician, he was all chips in, but now you have to build organically. That's not going to work the same way, because now you don't have that draft capital to give up to get these stars. So now you have to sort of build up from scratch. And if he can do that, it will cement him as one of the all-time great GMs, no question about it. And I loved what you said about Tutu Atwell, Ryan. I just want to double click on that. The way Tutu Atwell was used at Louisville, we see a similar guy here in LA on the college side being used and wanting to see more of. It's kind of the way Kaz Allen is being used at UCLA in that bubble screen game, going deep in the backfield, all of these different things. Kaz Allen's 175 pounds, Tutu Atwell is 165. So Kaz a little bit bigger, but, not by too much. And I know that Chip has a really nice relationship with McVay. That may be a nice opportunity for McVay to come to the UCLA campus and talk to Chip a little bit about what he wants to do with Tutu moving forward. So I think there's a lot of cool things that can be accomplished these next couple of weeks if the mindset is right with the players, with the management and the coaching staff. And so really excited to see how this shakes out, because oftentimes, Ryan, in the NFL, you see these teams that are out of contention that win towards the end of the season, 3 in a row, 5 out of 6, 6 out of 9. And that's the building block for the subsequent year, because there's so much parity in the NFL and there's so much turnover between playoff teams literally every year, that if you can build those habits at the end of one season, time and again, 85% of the time, it translates into a great start the subsequent year. So this is really, think of this not as game 11 of the 2022 season, but think of this as preseason or game 0 of the 2023 season. And with that mindset, it'll be great to see what the Rams can put together these last 2 months.
Yeah, and I think what the NFL has proven is that you can turn things around very quickly. So I know obviously the Rams won a Super Bowl last year. They look abysmal this year, but look at the Jets. Look at the Giants. Look at all these different, look at the Eagles. I mean, I know the Eagles made the playoffs last year, but they went from barely squeaking in to being arguably the best team in football. Look at the Vikings. All these teams, you can really turn things around quickly if you correctly evaluate the talent you have, and then B, hit correctly in the offseason, whether it's through free agency and the draft. Unfortunately, this past year, it looks like the Rams did not hit correctly in free agency and really did not hit correctly in the draft. Part of that due to injury as well. And their past drafts, when we've always praised these mid-round picks, well, all of those are kind of falling off. And we mentioned it, I think, last show about those mid-round picks look a lot better when the star talent next to them is playing like star talent. And unfortunately, this year, the star talent next to them is not really playing like star talent outside of Cooper Kupp and Aaron Donald. So that is the big, big challenge for this Rams team the rest of the season. I'm excited to see how they approach the challenge, how they accept the challenge, because they are a championship caliber team. They are the defending champs. Now they have to approach this opportunity like a championship modeled franchise. And I think they can do that, Jamal, and I'm excited to see it. That's all the time we got. Everyone have a blessed Thanksgiving, a happy holidays. For Jamal Badney, I'm Ryan Dowd. We'll talk to you all next week.
You're listening to the LA Football Podcast.